The pasuk in Yeshayahu Vayaveosim al Arkachi v'simachtim beis tefilasi is a pasuk that comes up all the time throughout this time period. It is part of our slichos refrain. It is a pasuk that many of us know, maybe even in song form. We may sing it in slichos or outside of slichos, getting us in the mood. And it also reminds us of what could be. One day we hope that this time period, especially the Avodah and Yom Kippur, will not only be one that is talked about, that is read from the Siddur, from the Machzor, that is davened in our tzibur from a shaliach tzibur in front of the room and imagined in our minds, but Ashrei Ha'ayin, we hope that one day we'll be able to see that with our own eyes, that the Beis HaMikdash will return. We're still in the weeks after Tisha B'Av, the Shiva Nechemta. We're still in the time period in which we're trying to get Nechama for the lack of the Beis HaMikdash, and so we read this understanding that there is something that we're lacking, understanding that we would rather have something more. The Beis HaMikdash would provide as a whole nother level of what the Aseret Yemei Tshuva and this time period of Elul and Tishrei would be like. And it reminds us really in so many ways of our tshuva process. After all, right before saying Hashamnu, Bagannu, Gazalnu, etc., after doing our personal vidui and expressing our shame for the things that we have done over the course of the year and expressing them in form of words, vidui bepeh, we say right beforehand, halavai, we could say to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, da'anachnu v'avoseinu lo chatanu. And then there's this word of aval that brings us all back to recognition of the fact that it's not true, and unfortunately, aval anachnu v'avoseinu chatanu. We recognize what could have been. Just like the Beis HaMikdash could be here and we could have a totally different experience, we could have been a different version of ourselves. We could have been a better version of ourselves. And had we had that opportunity, had we done that over the course of the year, we would be in a very different space in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and maybe we would feel a little less bad about all the chataim that we may have done over the course of the year and all the things we missed out over the course of the year. This time period reminds us of the things that we're missing and the things that we wish we could have. And it's also interesting that this pasuk is used in the Gemara and Brachos and Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, when Rabbi Yochanan Mishim Rabbi Yossi wants to know where we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself davens. We know that this time period is one of tefillah. We know it's tefillah, tshuva, tzedakah, ma'avir, zohar, gezerah. Tefillah is an important component of our experience during the Yamim Noraim, but tefillah is not only something that we do. It's kind of remarkable when you think about it that God himself davens as well. Minayin she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mispalel, and the answer is, says the Gemara, she'ner ma'vayosim al harkachi v'simachtim beis tefilasi. It doesn't say tefillah some in the house of your tefillos. My tefillos. What are my tefillos? Says the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I daven too. What does he daven? Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia says in the name of Rav, Yiratzon mifanai sheyichbashu rachamai al kis'i v'yigolu rachamai al midosai v'snahegim b'nei benai b'midas rachamim. In other words, all the things we hope from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he should treat us with rachamim, with mercy, and that he, Hashem kel rachum v'chanun, he says, so to speak, to himself. He davens, so to speak, that his own rachamim should overtake his kas, his anger towards us and our averos. And it's remarkable to think about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself davens that way, and in trying to interpret that and explain what's going on there, Rav Tzadok HaKohen in the Tziduk HaTzadik explains that what's going on is when you look at Torah and Tefillah, the only way to be successful in Torah and Tefillah, says Rav Tzadok, is when we feel the chisaron, when we feel like something is lacking. We daven better when we know that we're missing something, that something is missing from our lives. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is expressing to us here that there is something missing, so to speak. He wishes he could just automatically treat us with rachamim. As the Tzaddik explains, he's waiting for our tefillos. As the Chasam Sofer explains, he gave us the opportunity to have Bechira Chavshis. We are destined to maybe do mitzvos and averos, but in many ways it's in our hands to decide how that goes. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for us to come back to him, so to speak, so he could do all of these things. He davens either to remind us or to remind us of the fact that there is such a thing called chisaron. There's something that we're missing in our lives. And the same with Torah. It says it's a tzaddik that in order to learn well, you need to feel like you're missing something. You want to know more. You want to understand more. So too with tefillah. And it's a type of thing that really is quite on our minds when it comes to davening in general, and definitely during this time period. This idea of lacking something when we're approaching HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rav writes in a number of places, or Soloveitchik explains, that we need a reshus to be able to daven. We need permission to daven in the first place. And he explains that maybe it's from the fact that we once had karbanos, and this is in place of that, or maybe because the avos once davened, and we have their zechus to be able to fall in line with. And on a very basic level, says the Rav, it's because we're human beings and we strive to connect to Kadosh Baruch Hu. We desire to connect to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And so we need reshus in general when we're davening. And he brings the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah specifically in this period of time is quite apropos to talk about. Ilmale, had a Kadosh Baruch Hu not done it, Ilmale mikra kosuf, yevshor la'omro, it would be impossible to say, vayavor Hashem panav vayekra, Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, Nis'atef HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'shaliach tzibur, and he shows Moshe Rabbeinu v'herlo Moshe Rabbeinu Seder Tefillah. And if we do this every time that we sin, says the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Zayin of Abayz, Yasu l'fanei k'seder hazev ani mocha lachem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu again gives us permission to do something that would be audacious and totally efshor la'omro, would be impossible for us to say. But it's not only when it comes to slichos, it's in our normal davening as well. Every single davening we approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a certain level of trepidation. We are lowly human beings. Lanu boshes aponim, l'cha Hashem atzdaka, v'lanu boshes aponim. We say during slichos itself, Hashem has all of the tzedakah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us everything, and we keep messing up. We are a little bit ashamed to approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But not only that, we may have even prepared the words, but we still say before every single tefillah, Hashem svasai tiftachu fi agidil asecha. The Gemara tells us that line is not an interruption between geula l'tefillah. It is part and parcel of tefillah, tefillah richta. It is part of the longer part of davening. It is part and parcel of davening. We daven so that we can daven. It's quite remarkable when you think about it. Hashem, yes, gives us the reshus to daven to Him, but we still daven before we daven to ask Him to help us in that process, so that our words that come out of our mouths should be appropriate and correct. And we take it to a whole nother level when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. When we say Ochila, LaKel, it ends with Hashem svasai tiftachu fi agidil asecha. But it's much more than that. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we say, please, yes, it's out us. After all, Adam marchei leiv. But again, we go, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, may Hashem, ma'aneh lashon, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, allow us to open our mouths, allow us to approach you in this moment of unity, of the moment of anila dodi v'dodi li, in this moment in which we are accompanying HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'nashuva, we are both taking steps towards each other, and we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, allow us right now, right before the Avodah on Yom Kippur, right before the Malchus and Shofar, Zichronos on Rosh Hashanah, right before the important parts. In fact, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik used to say, Ochila in his Shemona Esrei, in his private Shemona Esrei, because it was such an important part of our davening, we need an extra amount of help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We daven even stronger to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we were able to daven in the first place. We rely so heavily on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even in the things that He gives us reshus to do in the first place. What a remarkable moment in davening and tefillah. Yes, it's a beautiful song, Ochila, LaKel. It's a gorgeous tune. There are multiple beautiful tunes for this tefillah. But in so many ways, it reminds us right then and there that even though we said Hashem svasai tiftach right before our davening in the first place, and the shaliach tzibur already asked reshus to daven in hineni right before the entire musaf experience, there's a special davening, special tefillah to help us daven, a special tefillah to help us get our words right. If you think about it, it's so true. Every time we have such a deep encounter with someone that's really important, we may have prepared everything we wanted to say, put all the words together, and then we might come out the wrong way, may say it the wrong way, may jump to the second point before we say the first point. We're nervous, we're concerned. It's a time period in this time period when we're concerned, we're a little bit nervous, maybe very nervous, and we have the ability, what a chesed, what a racham, and the not only HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows us to approach Him in the first place, but allows us to ask Him beforehand to help us in that approach as well. Yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you let us come to you. Yes, you let us to daven. We have reshus to daven to you in the first place. And we don't have the base of midrash as we started with. And we know you're davening to this should all work out. And you're asking yourself, so to speak, that your rachamim should go over your kas. And you're just waiting for us to do the right thing. And here we are with all the permission in the world to approach you. And yet we're still nervous. And yet we're still not sure if we could say it right. And so we have another opportunity, another expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's rachmanus for us is to say, Ochila, LaKel. Hashem svasai tiftachu fi agidil asecha one more time. Right before these peak moments in our tefillos of Musaf, to ask Hashem one more time, help us daven to you. We daven so that Hashem can hear our tefillos and that we can say them correctly. Mirza Hashem, there should be a time in which all our tefillos are answered, l'tova, for ourselves, for our families, and for all of Klal Yisrael. And Hashem should be able to give us the zechus and the merit and the opportunity to say the right words when we need to have the right kavanos, and to daven in a perfect and an ideal way as possible. Kadosh Baruch Hu, please answer our tefillos that our davenings should be correct and well. Have a wonderful Yom Rosh Hashanah, have a wonderful Yom Kippur. Ksiv v'chsima tova to everyone.